My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to This Song Is Yours, a music podcast where we chat to a new guest each week, talk about their life and creative endeavours, and talk to them about some of the music they love. Our show works by chatting to our guests about music, their songwriting techniques, and occasionally getting them to make you a playlist of the songs they love. Welcome to episode 144. I'm your host, Simon Fink. Our guest today is Josh Pyke. The Australian troubadour has recently released his 7th studio record, entitled To Find Happiness. In today's episode, we're speaking with Josh about how he approaches writing songs of a personal matter, working with Gordi, and his ever-loyal fan base over the years. Here we go. Our guest today is one of the most popular Australian singer-songwriters of the last 15 to 20 years. Having spent the last few years putting his creative efforts into TV scores for the ABC and another children's book, he returned to music last week with the release of his 7th studio record, entitled To Find Happiness. Please welcome to This Song Is Yours, Josh Pyke. Hello, sir. How are we?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Whereabouts are you joining us from today, Josh?
I'm in my studio in Sydney, and yeah, just sort of preparing for another 4 days of rain by the looks of it.
From what I can see in the background, I know that usually there's a few guitars, a few other bits and pieces at a pool table that I see in the studio.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's one of the most vital pieces of equipment in the studio.
Look, I think every now and again it's probably good to kind of take your mind out of the musical space and into something that still allows you to kind of be a bit creative, but in a different way maybe.
I definitely play pool more than I write songs, definitely.
That's very fair. That's very fair. Josh, we're talking today because you have just released your 7th studio record, To Find Happiness. Congratulations.
Thank you.
My absolute pleasure. I guess being the 7th in the last, where are we now, 15 years or so, does it get any easier? Is it any different from when you kind of first started releasing those records in 2007 or 6?
I think it's easier in the sense that in a couple of different ways. So I think it's easier in that I think I'm a better songwriter. You know, like I when you're in your 20s and writing songs, it's all angst and emotion, and I still rely entirely on that to write songs. I feel like I haven't lost that, but what I've gained is just a hell of a lot of experience in songwriting. So you want all that angst and you want that real emotional engagement with what you're doing. For me, anyway, other pop writers and stuff, they can write pop songs and be focused more on, I guess, the feeling or the beat or whatever. But for me, it's really got to be about the emotional engagement. But yeah, just in terms of, I'm a better player. I record all my stuff here in my studio. So it's, I'm a better engineer. I'm a better producer. I'm more experimental. And then also because I feel like I've established my core fan base and I don't really feel I don't feel like I'm trying to prove anything to anybody anymore. So I feel a lot more free, I guess. So yeah, I find it easier. I felt a whole lot more fear around releasing stuff when I started, and now I just feel excited when I release a record, and I'm already keen to kind of do another one.
That's very fair, and that's very exciting to hear. This new record is entitled To Find Happiness, and I'm kind of curious whether, we have had a listen to the album, and we'll let people who are listening to this podcast make up their own mind. Is this for you more of what you've found in terms of happiness, or your journey to continuing that kind of path of continuing to try and find happiness?
Yeah, it's definitely the latter. So it's not like, I don't find these songs particularly happy. But the idea is that my whole life, when I'm processing negative things or things that are troubling me, or whether it's the world, the state of the world, or personally, I do that by writing songs and producing music and making sounds that give me an emotional response. And so that's the quest, to kind of purge those things and have that catharsis and be a functional human in my normal life. So yeah, it's definitely about the search. And I'm a perfectly happy person, but that quest for sort of constant happiness, I believe, is a bit of a myth. Like nobody's ever. It's like that old line from that Persian folktale, which says, even this shall pass. And it's, this Persian king who, goes through war, and they're like, oh, that was terrible. And he's like, even this will pass. And then he gets all this gold, and they're like, this is amazing. He's like, even this will pass, and just keeps going. So I think it's definitely about the search rather than the actual destination.
It's a realist's perspective, if you will.
Yeah, I think it's kind of quite Buddhist, really. Like my in-laws are Buddhist, and I'm a proper atheist in terms of organized religion, but I'm definitely sort of agnostic when it comes to spirituality and how you engage in spirituality. And for me, it's I think it's all about the quest. Like I remember reading years ago when I was in my 20s, and I was dabbling in psychedelics, and I remember reading this book called what was it called? It was the Mescalito Way of Knowledge or something. It was about a social anthropologist who went and tried to become a shaman in South America, and his shaman teacher said to him, like the only time that you'll ever find pure happiness is like the second before you die. I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I can kind of agree with that point, and kind of coming from a similar maybe standpoint of yourself in terms of it being an atheist and in-laws who are Buddhists, I can definitely kind of empathize with that kind of viewpoint.
Your in-laws are Buddhist as well?
They are, yes.
Really? Oh, that's funny, isn't it?
I was going to touch on this a little bit later, but now that we are here, there was a incredible TED Talk that you did in Sydney, I believe end of last year, start of this year, very recently.
Last year, yeah.
Yeah, and it touched on the experience of, I believe, racism through your wife, who's of Vietnamese descent, and your children as well. And firstly, as someone from a mixed family, I thought the talk was very incredible and would have also taken quite a lot of bravery, because for anyone who hasn't seen it, we'll put it in the show notes of this podcast. But it's an incredible talk, and I'm kind of curious. I know we discussed before, 15, 16, 17 years into your career as a musician, doing these kind of things now, do you find using, I guess, as you said, there's an established fan base and people behind you now, so there's less pressure on you music-wise. Do you enjoy, I guess, using your platform for things such as this, talking about like your own personal experiences with your family, or there's the podcast as well, just to kind of give another facet of kind of using your platform to, I guess, talk about things other than just like playing your songs or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of conflicted about it, because like most of the time I just want to live my private life and not, I have, lots of discussions about these things, and, like, wide ranging interests in politics and, general sort of social psychology and philosophy, I guess. And I don't often talk about it, but and half the time I'm just like, yeah, well, just that's fine. Just, you know, put what you want in your songs, and that can be as public as you want to be. And then I just find myself getting into these positions where I'm suddenly on Q&A and I'm a spokesperson for the music industry, you know, at the beginning of COVID. And then I got asked to do this TED Talk, and I was like, it would be really easy to write a speech on creativity, you know, or songwriting. And it would, you know, that would be an interesting talk. But I just, you know, and with my wife's encouragement, she was like, you know, why don't you just do something different? And there are a few things that I could have talked about, you know, like I've had some pretty significant anxiety, mental health issues in the last couple of years. I could have talked about that. You know, my mum has got Alzheimer's, and the grief of sort of the weird grief of dealing with somebody that's still here. You know, I could have spoken about that as well, but it just so happened that 2 weeks before I got asked to do the talk, I'd had this experience that I talk about in the TED Talk, which I can't be bothered going into now. It's, you know, it's a long story, but yeah, so it was fresh on my mind, and it was something that we've been talking about a lot. And, you know, it's not particularly flattering to me, but it's, you know, I'm just a human like we all are. None of us are perfect. I don't really believe, you know, like I find it pretty funny when people online and stuff are you know, putting themselves up on these pedestals as like the bastion for wokeness or for a certain, you know, agenda or a certain political or social leaning. And it's just not true. Like, behind closed doors, everyone's a bit shit, you know, and everyone can do better, and everyone can try and do better. And that's basically what the talk is, you know. I'm a bit shit like everybody else, but I'm trying to do better, you know, and that's all we can do, I think.
Of course, I think that was maybe the reason why I commended you on it, because the talk isn't coming from a place of this is my experience, this is, you know, what I think. It was kind of from an honest place and from a very realistic place where, it did kind of point out the number of flaws that I think everyone has, and that kind of just. Anyway, it was a fantastic TED Talk. We won't hold up too much of this talk about that, but I just wanted to, to address that and have that noted. I know you just mentioned as well that obviously the last number of years haven't been particularly easy, that this record is kind of on the journey instead of the destination to happiness. Respectfully, with your permission, and I wouldn't want to harp on it too much, I would like to talk about possibly the songwriting process. I know that, as you mentioned, your mother is currently going through Alzheimer's, and that there's one or two songs on this record that kind of, I guess, address that. And I don't want to go into the details. That is your personal life. But when you're sitting down to write a song like this, and I imagine it might be a cathartic experience, it might not be, how do you begin that process? Or is it just something that kind of I guess comes out or flows out?
Yeah, it's definitely just something that happens. I mean, it's you know, I can only ever write from personal experience and from a honest place. And so, you know, that's why I joke to my wife that it's like, you know, my 7 albums pretty much charted our relationship as well. You know, I think I've written 2 songs in my whole life where I take on the character of somebody that doesn't actually exist. So it just comes out. I mean, it's just what I don't even know what I'm writing about half the time, and then I'll kind of like reflect on the words and I'll be like, oh, that's actually clearly about this, and then I'll go back and refine what I've done to make it make more sense to me.
I have a secret. I wore the wrong foundation for years. Then I discovered Il Maquillage. Their AI-powered quiz makes it so easy to find a perfect match, customized for your unique skin tone, undertone, and coverage needs. With 600,000 5-star reviews and 50 shades of flawless natural coverage, this foundation is going viral for a reason. And with Try Before You Buy, you can try your full size at home for 14 days. Take the quiz at ilmaquillage.com/quiz. That's ILMAKIAGE.com/quiz.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
So yeah, it just happens, and I know now not to question it, and I know now that it's the way. Like I'm better at singing. I'm better at writing songs about stuff than I am at talking about it. I find it pretty hard to talk about, and which is part of why it's been quite hard to deal with all that stuff. But yeah, for whatever reason, it's just I'm lucky to have songwriting as a tool, I guess, to get that out. And if I wasn't a professional songwriter, I'm sure I'd be doing it anyway to kind of get these things out of me. It's a difficult thing though, because it's also like, they're all personal things, but then I have an ego, and I want these songs to be successful and popular. But I've never compromised the integrity of the songs to try and make them be better or more commercial. So in some ways I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot by being honest in my songwriting. But on the other hand, I think the people that relate to my songs and their honesty, I guess, will stick around for 20, 30 years, which has so far been the case. And I'd rather have that kind of career than a kind of one big pop song and then trying to always chase my tail from then.
Yeah, of course. I can imagine that with anything like that, you're straddling that line of a commercial hit, trying to be honest to yourself, but also, as you just mentioned before, you're still wanting to maintain an element of a private life and kind of keep maybe one or two details to yourself. I imagine it is kind of like not a difficult line to walk, but it's something that you kind of have to do with everything in mind.
This one's been a bit. I think I probably exposed my personal life more than I ever have in the last couple of years with the TEDTalk and talking openly about the anxiety thing, and then with mum's illness. And it feels good in one way, because it's I feel like people have been encouraged to deal with their own issues because of being a bit more public about it. But at the same time, it's like I have to be very wary, and like I run it by my family and stuff first, because it's not just my story to tell. In particular with mum, it's everybody's. She's not just my mum, you know what I mean? Like, so I've got to be respectful of my siblings and my dad, making sure that it's I'm not sort of going too far into the whole thing, because so that's for me, that's where the real difficulty comes in, and just trying to not be selfish about somebody else's story.
Of course, I can very much respect that. With this new record, Josh, you do have two very lovely guest stars on the record too, who I believe who are somewhat close to home. One was a recipient of the Josh Pyke Partnership a number of years ago, who was Sophie, or Gordi, as people would know her, and the other as your podcast host, Elena Stone. How did those kind of collaborations come about this time?
Well, Alana's like, we collaborate a lot, and she was, I think she just came over, from memory, she just came over and we were doing a co-write for her, and we just recorded a demo. And then I was like, actually, while you're here and you've got your, she had a accordion there and everything, I was like, can you just, excuse me, play on this track and play some accordion on it? And so that was Circle of Light. And then I was like, actually, while you're here, can you also just like do some singing? And then so we did that. So that came about very just spur of the moment. She happened to be at my place. And then with Sophie, that was more like, I was like, I really would love to get Gordi on a track. And so, yeah, we were just emailing back and forth, and I asked her if she'd be into it, and she was excited to do it. So we just emailed back and forth some ideas. I had a chord progression, which I emailed her, and then she like kept the chords but changed the kind of rhythm of it, sent it back. And then I wrote some lyrics, sent it back. Then she added like a little, some variations and some harmonies and stuff. And then luckily there was one like very short break in lockdown where she was able to actually come to Sydney and come here to the studio and lay down the vocals. So that was awesome. So we got to do that, and that was it. So it was that one was more sort of planned, whereas Alana just happened to be at my house at the time.
That's very cool. I know that you've obviously done collaborations before. We a little while ago, maybe a year ago, we spoke to Cav about basement birds and things like that. Was this experience with Gordi, like sending things back and forth, was this kind of the first time doing a collaboration remotely?
It's not the first time, but it's the first time that it turned out well, I got to say. Like, I've done a few co-writing sessions and stuff like that where you're trying to do stuff remotely, and it's often co-writing is a real funny beast. It's like you kind of have to have a rapport, and so when you're doing it remotely, it's hard to build that rapport. But luckily, Sophie and I already knew each other and we'd hung out before, and so we kind of had that to our benefit. But it's writing songs for me, like co-writing songs for me is like I've done lots of songwriting camps where you sit down and you try and write a pop song, and that's relatively easy because you kind of have an agenda and you have an aim. But co-writing, when you're wanting to write something that you're really going to love and stand behind for 20 years and sing for 20 years in the way that I do for my stuff, is I just find it almost impossible unless it happens completely organically. So this one was a bit of a rarity. But in the past, like song like Punch in the Heart that I wrote with Whitley years ago, and then Katie Steele sang it, Lawrence aka Whitley and I were on tour together, and we just like were sitting around and like literally just outside the front of the hotel and wrote the song in 10 minutes or so. And the one that I did with Holly Throsby a while ago, that was she was here and we were just actually in the room, getting it happening. And same with the Basement Bird stuff. We came with ideas, but we were all there together, just hanging out on Cab's porch for weeks at a time. So I find the remote thing, I think it's a bit like the idea of doing live streamed shows. Like it's kind of good in theory, but I don't know, it's never quite the same. It doesn't quite work the same, I don't think.
I would 100% agree with that. Yeah, no. I think that's very fair. There's something that still, it scratches a certain itch, but it doesn't quite reach the same heights maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I went to see Augie March last week play Sunset Studies from beginning to end, and it was just like so good, and it was so good, and it was so euphoric, and I don't know, there was just like no way that would have been as good if I was just watching that on a screen. It's just I just don't think. And I did a live stream show when COVID hit. I jumped on that and tried to keep things going and create value for my fans who couldn't come to the New South Wales shows. And I'm sure they enjoyed it, but it's definitely not the same. And it also influences the way you perform as a performer, thinking about this other kind of other element, whole other audience on the other side of the camera. So yeah, I'm not massively into it, to be honest.
That is very, very fair. I know that a friend of the podcast, Andrea, is a very, very big fan of yours, and I know that she talks about the kind of fan connection that people have at a Josh Pyke gig, and I can imagine that when you are kind of performing to, a mobile phone or a webcam or whatever the setup might be, that it just doesn't have that same kind of intimacy and connection, really.
Yeah, and that's, like people, some of my fans have been coming to my shows for 15 years, and it's like when I go on tour, it's like their chance to kind of, they don't see each other in the meantime, and they see each other, and it's kind of cool. There's like a community of these supporters that know each other, and I know them, and it's so you just, and I see, like when I do live stream stuff, I'll see them pop up on the comments feed and stuff, but it's just not the same. It's
100%. I think that's that was the other kind of bit of information we got from her and from the community, was that it's a combination of meeting up with a community of people, like-minded interests and things like that, but also the fact that, as you just said, you know them quite well. I know, speaking to a few fans, that they've said they've gone to gigs, they've spoken to you after the show, and you've said how's this thing or how's this thing from the last time you saw them, which is, I think, a very appreciative fan base when they know that the artist is actually, one, just a generally nice human being, but two, takes an interest in what's going on in their fans' lives.
It's a facade. It's all a facade. No, I mean, I think it's, I think particularly in Australia, we have such a, we have a relatively small market, and, no musician that I know takes for granted the fact that we can do this for a living. So you got to respect the people that allow you to do that.
Of course. Josh, I know that you are going out on tour in support of the album. I think there's a few shows around April here and there, but then there's a proper tour in June. Are you looking forward to kind of being able to get back out on the road?
I am looking forward to it. I'm sort of a little bit trepidatious as well because it's been such a long time. I'm really excited about playing with the band again. The last tour I did, that I was briefly able to do, I guess the year before last, was solo, and it was amazing to be able to do it. It was such a blessing to be able to play any shows at all. But I miss playing with the band. It's great. It's like, that kind of camaraderie and everything. So I am excited, and I'm a bit like just nervous as well. It's been such a long time. I'm not tour fit anymore. Like like the late nights and early mornings, and then the adrenaline, the highs and the lows and everything. It's and just trying to stay on top of not drinking too much and trying to stay healthy and all that, which is sometimes any muso will tell you it's pretty exciting when you with all your mates at a show, but then when you have to do it 4 times in a row and then get up and also go home and get your kids off to school, it's like you got to be a bit more careful these days. So yeah, I'm a bit nervous about like finding my form again, but yeah, generally very excited.
That's very cool. I know that there's a show as well. I think in September you're playing with Leon Bridges, Teskey Brothers, I think 1 or 2 other acts in WA. For you, are you excited? I guess, as you just mentioned, you went to see Augie March. Both as a musician, you're excited to get back out on the road. Are you excited to see gigs and festivals kind of coming back in a semi-normal kind of way?
Yeah, 100%. Like being at that gig the other night for Augie March, I just felt at home. Like I've spent all my adult life at gigs and venues, and when I'm not playing gigs, going to see gigs, it's still the thing that I love the most. And like in times of at the moment, we've got COVID, we've got climate change, we've got bloody Russia invading Ukraine, and I was thinking about all that stuff before I went to the show, and then I was at the show and I was like, yeah, but we also have this, and this is something worth kind of fighting for. So yeah, I just hope it is actually real because I think there's also a bit of a reluctance to go out still from people, which is fair enough. Like they don't want to disrupt their lives. They go out and they get sick, and then their lives are disrupted. They can't see friends and family. They can't go to work and all that. So I think there's still a bit of a reticence to actually go out and see shows, but hopefully that will wane during the year. Fingers crossed.
I agree with that. I think that we're starting to see more people go back, but it does seem like there's a little bit of apprehension, which is totally fair and normal. And as you said, hopefully we'll see that kind of go back to normal a little bit more as time goes on and we become more used to it, or it becomes more of the norm, I guess.
Fingers crossed.
Josh, usually we would ask our guests what they're currently listening to, if there's anything on your record player or streaming service respectively that you've kind of taken an interest to lately.
I've been listening to a lot of this band called Howdy from the States, it's spelt HOVVDY. And I came across, I heard them on 2SER, and then I did the Shazam and found them, and they're really great. So I'm a bit obsessed with that kind of almost like slacker indie singer-songwriter stuff, it used to be called Sandy Alex G. Now I think it's just Alex G. But yeah, Christian Lee Hudson and Alex G and Howdy it's kind of harkens back to like Elliott Smith and stuff, but also, I don't know, it's a bit more, it's got a bit of psychedelia in there as well. But yeah, that's mainly what I've been listening to.
That's very cool. We'll definitely have to have a look at that band, and we'll put the links in the show notes for anyone who wants to have a listen. We'll also put a link for the show notes for your record, Josh, to Find Happiness. Thank you again for being on the podcast today. I do appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And that's our show. A massive thank you to Josh Pyke for his time. To Find Happiness is out now, and we've left links in the show notes if you'd like to buy the record or see Josh on tour. We also want to give a huge shout out to Nick at Sony Music Australia for helping out with today's interview. If you like this show, please subscribe wherever you get your pods and stay up to date when new episodes are released. We release new shows each Wednesday and Friday morning, and we now have a Patreon, which you can find within the show notes of this episode. You can follow the playlist profile on Spotify, and you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Until next week, cheers.
Imagine the softest sheets you've ever felt. Now imagine them getting even softer over time. That's what you'll feel with Boll & Branch's best-selling signature sheets in 100% organic cotton. In a recent customer survey, 96% replied that Boll & Branch sheets get softer with every wash. Start getting your best night's sleep in sheets that get softer and softer for years to come. Try their sheets with a 30-night guarantee. Plus, get 15% off your first order at bollandbranch.com, code BUTTERY. Exclusions apply. See site for details.